Howdy. RM was best known for their bespoke network solutions and unique educational software in the 1980s and 90s. But you may not know that RM also offered a non-network solution for school PCs during this time. I'm of course referring to RM ClassMate Desktop. Originally starting life on a specialized build of Windows 3.0 that would only run on RM branded machines, with a patch for Windows 3.11 in the form of Release 2. By the time ClassMate 3 rolled around, this was dropped, and a school could use any old Windows 95 machine that they had. ClassMate was intended to be the front end that primary school students would use in dedicated ICT suites, or even a classroom window box machine if yours was fancy enough. Like Color Magic, you could buy this desktop replacement separately for £49 for a single client per major release, or $96.41 in 1996, $94.68 in 1999, and $91.68 in 2002 respectively when you adjust for inflation. And with that, I think it's time to give ClassMate Desktop a whirl. I would like to take this time to give a massive thank you to the RM user group for loaning me a copy of the ClassMate 3 install, as it is very hard to find actual media. The installation process of RM ClassMate is fairly vanilla, as was most software at the time. But an interesting point is that despite networking is entirely optional with this product, RM still requires you to install the NetBIOS protocol, which I assume is how ClassMate communicates with an optional store-bought server. This consequently leads to another fun fact about installation. As mentioned earlier, RM ClassMate 3 is aimed for clients running Windows 95, but Windows 98 First Edition is similar enough to the point that installing the necessary network protocols allows you to load RM ClassMate 3 onto a 98 client. And no, before you ask, this requirement means you can't get this release of ClassMate running on 2nd edition. Believe me, I've tried. You will find that even installing the NetBIOS protocol you cannot progress the ClassMate installer. My best guess is Microsoft did significant enough changes under the hood on 2nd edition that prevents ClassMate 3 to be installed. And that's where ClassMate 4 would come in and fix this issue. In any case, once installation is complete you are prompted to reboot. And once you do, you are greeted by the memorable logon screen for RM ClassMate Desktop. Exactly as I remember it. There is a drop-down box where you can either select or type the username in, and the login button will sign you in. If the account has a password, you will be prompted for that as well. We'll start off with what students see when they log in. The desktop is seemingly heavily inspired by Windows 3. There is numerous programs that are separated into their own windows. These windows are read-only, so a student is unable to resize or drag them in any way. I really do like how these are predefined and everything is in order. The top of the screen shows who's logged in the middle, and the log off button along with the time on the right. The taskbar is fairly barren, and the start menu only mirrors what the windows show. It's very simple, but it works so well. And I remember really liking ClassMate's layout that I tried to replicate on my dad's Windows 2000 computer. No doubt much to his annoyance. Another point I love about this desktop is how when you full screen a program it just takes up the entire screen. So you can just be enveloped in whatever you're doing, and I enjoy it very much. An interesting oversight I found is that while you are naturally locked out of the control panel, you can still access the internet options in Internet Explorer like normal with all the settings that entails. And this is how I got PortalWeb working on ClassMate so I could browse the internet like one would when RM Window Box was being sold. Switching gears now, and we're going to take a look at what ClassMate looks like if you're an administrator. The manager account is hidden by default, and to access it you need to type it into the Dropbox. Then the password when the pop-up appears. Thankfully, I was given a manual to ClassMate 3 years ago, and I knew what the default password was for the manager account, so I just let myself into it. Manager is largely a standard Windows desktop with the addition of the ClassMate specific stuff. Starting with RM printer setup, we see RM provides some tailored tools to configure printers for students to use on other accounts. The first program seems to be a slightly tweaked version of Windows' default printer setup, The second one you can't actually access unless the client is set up for a school shared network, like how the installation prompted. And the last one is basically the first one in reverse. ClassMate Help is a basic manual for understanding the package if you don't have the paper manual on hand. And finally, but certainly not least, we have the application where all the magic happens. The program is neatly split into two categories, resources and users. Users are self-explanatory, as that is the user account students would use. Resources are the programs and their respective windows you saw in the pupil account. You can add or remove these cupboards at will, and you can assign a program in one or multiple of these cupboards. To create a new user, click on the smiley face on the toolbar and enter a name, along with a password if it's something like for a teacher. You can also delete an unused account from the ClassMate manager. Right-clicking on a user account presents a drop-down box that allows you to copy the user with settings and layouts that you have configured, and then the properties itself. This pop-up box allows you to either hide a user, reveal an option to put the account into maintenance mode after you've logged into it, which basically allows the admin to modify settings in the student account such as themes, backgrounds, and access to Windows Explorer, which is usually locked out from students. Furthermore, you can also remove the shortcut to My Documents and modify the layout. Going to Layout, you can see you can add the resource cabinets you made beforehand in ClassMate Manager, and drag and resize them depending how many programs are in that cabinet. It's vital you get the size right, as students can change the shape of these during an IT lesson. An additional neat feature for an administrator is back on the logon screen. While at the password prompt for the manager account, if you click on Configure and then Display Settings, you get to access the display settings without actually needing to log in. You can also change the settings to the actual logon screen from here. These settings are still password protected, but it's nice to have if you just need to quickly fix the resolution on the client. We're now going to be moving ahead a couple of years to the next major release, which is ClassMate 5. Release 4 I deem more as a minor release featuring bug fixes in order to work on the Windows 98 2nd edition. From memory, 3 and 4 are very similar. ClassMate 5 on the other hand is a completely different beast. This was made for Windows XP and released circa 2002 along with the Windows Box 9 package that schools could purchase. How I got my hands on this version of RM ClassMate is a bit of a funny story. In 2022, I was browsing eBay to see what type of RM notebooks were available with no intention of purchasing when I happened to stumble across a listing for an RM Mobile 1 laptop that miraculously still had its original XP install intact. I knew I had to get it and preserve this install of RM Window Box, as install media is rare, and laptops like these would normally have been re-imaged to Community Connect during their life in schools. This was before the user group lended me that ClassMate 3 install CD, and this was going to be the only part of this very video. However, you can guess that things didn't go to plan, and it took me 3 years to image to a VM, fix the aforementioned image not booting, and cleansing it of school data. But it's now in a state where I can install RM ClassMate for the XP era. When you first boot the machine, it will look pretty stock with the exception of the account names and their profile images. I always liked the different Jack-in-the-Box pictures, something I wish I had on my own personal PC I owned at the time. It's also a good analogy for whose account it's intended for. Each of these 3 accounts do give more access to the underlying Windows installation depending on the account. The pupil account is the first to check out. This would be the one most would have used when this package was in its prime. While there are 3 accounts in ClassMate, it's actually these classes which are the main emphasis of this release. Each of these are sandboxed areas that has their own accounts and assigned groups of programs. Selecting one will give you access to this sandboxed area. It will also fire up RM Explorer, which is how students and staff are expected to open applications. This solution is considerably more modern looking, but lacks that certain character that the Windows 3 inspired layout held in previous releases. It also basically uses what is present in the start menu as a guide to what to display, like the cabinets in ClassMate 3. I'm going to test out the Sandbox Documents folder in Action by creating a first Word document, then thanks to the fact that you can easily change classes without needing to log out a pupil, I can just click on a different class. You will see that the available programs have changed, and my document is no longer showing the document I just created. Clicking the Start menu reveals it's unusually short and very locked down. I love how teeny it is under the pupil account, and something I admittedly sorely missed on vanilla XP installs. Another interesting quirk is that the C drive is exposed on this account too, though I suspect this is a limitation to XP itself than something RM would have intended themselves. However, it was fun during one IT lesson as a kid just idly clicking through each of the folders and see what wonders laid within. And yes, you do have read-write permissions, so things can be sent to the recycle bin, which I find particularly amusing. Naturally, the control panel is locked out, but an admin can unlock it using the handy RM Unlock user, which is essential to access the internet settings for something like PortalWeb. This also means you can have custom themes applied to pupil, and students don't have to use Bliss if the school so desired. And that's basically it for the pupil account. The teacher account does give a user more permissions and is password protected, but it is similar to the pupil account with a class selector and using the same sandbox documents folder as the students. The first new icon, Learning Alive, is an online resource that students and teachers could use, though details are a little hazy from my exposure as a kid at this point. Naturally, this has been taken offline and isn't available anymore. Teachers Tools is just a folder where certain programs are stored that a member of staff may commonly use during a class. I find it odd this is a separate thing on the desktop, but I can't deny it is dead simple just getting to the applications you want. Furthermore, the Start menu is no longer as barren and is presented as a more standard XP layout. Teachers can also access the control panel functions without needing further authentication, like internet options and display settings. And that leaves the manager account, which is more or less a normal XP desktop with no restrictions in place. The ClassMate manager has been given a complete makeover to better fit the aesthetic XP was going for. The home screen of this new version of Manager does put more emphasis on classes, like the rest of ClassMate 5. Double clicking on them gives you the options like changing the profile pic, adding or changing passwords, and managing what program students of that class will access in RM Explorer. Additionally, like ClassMate versions 3 and 4, this release specifically looks for shortcuts in the Programs folder in all users. The left-hand bar is where you can add or modify aspects of ClassMate. Create a class is where you can create a new class. Though some settings, like setting a password, cannot be done while creating an account, which I find an odd decision. Edit a class does the same as double-clicking on the classes like we did earlier. And delete a class removes whatever class you have selected, with the appropriate dialog box asking you if you're really sure about doing so. Down below that is the option to manage universal program resources instead of on a per-user basis. This works as the other variant does. Below that are the user account settings and telling the client to locate a Storebox server on the network. This obviously won't do anything here as I don't have a Storebox, or a Windows 2000 server VM deployed with the special permissions ClassMate is looking for. The user accounts brings you to a subpage where you can edit existing accounts or create new ones. Interestingly, the admin would need to traverse outside the ClassMate manager to create a new account. Fortunately, this process is mentioned in the official RM ClassMate 5 manual on page 39. But the gist is that you need to open the built-in user account settings and create a new limited account, then adding it to ClassMate in the manager as either a pupil or teacher style account. I'm very grateful for modern virtual machine software having snapshots as a method of backing up and restoring to a working state if something goes wrong. My first attempt somehow corrupted the XP install. There is also an additional bit of software included that's worth mentioning. It's called CD1 Manager. This, along with the front-facing pick and mix that students and teachers would have used, is basically an ISO manager and reader of sorts. Except it doesn't use ISOs, but rather a proprietary standard. and was only compatible with select educational software that OM sold. The idea was so students could access this software without interaction of those costly CD discs. Sadly, I'm unable to show either programs working as it, like a large portion of ClassMate 5, looks for a store-bought server that hosted these disk images, and won't even show the interface if it doesn't detect one. You can find screenshots of the CD-ROM manager in the aforementioned ClassMate 5 manual, however. And there we have it, OM ClassMate for Windows. It is wonderfully nostalgic to go back and use these desktop environments once again. And what of ClassMate, you may be wondering? Well, version 5 was the last in the series. Around the same time as the release of ClassMate 5, OM was heavily encouraging schools to switch over to their network solution, Community Connect, and made an especially big push upon the release of Community Connect 4 in 2008. OM ceased selling ClassMate altogether in 2005, and it has been lost to time ever since. Now, since I got loaned that ClassMate 3 install by the OM user group, I am unable to release it publicly, which honestly is fair enough. However, I have no such restrictions for the manual of ClassMate 3 and my install of ClassMate 5, as I got them from outside the user group. So in the description down below you'll find links to the ClassMate 5 VM and my copy of the manual for Windows Box 8 on archive.org, along with the ClassMate 5 manual that someone else has uploaded many years ago on this obscure site. As for me, I'm going to be using Windows 98 like this moving forward. I just love obscure desktop environments such as ClassMate 3 and 4. They're so fascinating, and ClassMate in particular has stuck with me after all these years. I think WhiskOS in particular will always hold a special place in my heart. But OM's obscure desktop environment for primary schools will be a close second. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a long time coming and I am very pleased how it came out. If you used Windows Box as a kid, please share your stories in the comments down below, as I genuinely want to know. I read all the comments for the ClassMate and RISC-PC videos with people's experiences and stories using them, and they've been really fascinating to me. But for now, thank you so very much for watching.